welcome to the Wolfeboro Exchange. And we just we got to actually get some new pictures of me in action because that beard and that 40 pounds lighter. It's a new year. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas. Got Chris Dow here today. Long ado. Been waiting a long time for this. Wolfeboro single track. Chris and I grew up together. Didn't go to school the whole way, but most of the way, because pretty much elementary school and middle school. You went to Brewster.
Yep.
And UNH together.
Roommates. Yeah, we lived together for
roommates at UNH. I'm sure Brian will try to use that against me, but regardless of that, we're here today to talk about bike riding at Wolfeboro Single Track Alliance. It's a great group. Just to give you a little story, give the people out there a little story. Chris has been riding his whole life, and I rode when I was a kid, and I've kind of ridden on and off, but nothing to the level that he's done. But when I was getting ready for this, I remembered back, and we had a group of friends that I kind of bounced in and out of that group and into other groups. But Chris was always my friend growing up, and we hung out all the time. But Chris and this other crew used to ride. You guys used to ride bikes all the time. And I remember one time I was on my white Huffy, and we were out in Sewell Woods, and there's a sandy area kind of in the middle of the trail system there. We were out like building jumps and building little bridges out of logs over rivers and stuff like that, and trying to just have fun. And I mean that's all you did back then. Like if you wanted to get outside and do stuff, you went and grabbed your bike and met up with your friends, and that's the only way you knew. Like if they were even in the house, the bike was gone, they were gone someplace. So that was a great way to grow up, and I think that's that kind of inspired you in some ways to you're president of Single Track, great group of men and women that are part of that, dedicated to building trails in Wolfeboro. So why don't you talk a little bit about kind of what got you into bike riding and where you just your whole thing for Wolfeboro Single Track.
Yeah. So I think if you go way back, I growing up, my neighbor that I was really good friends with was John Hansel and his brother Ralph, who worked at Nordic Skier, and he was always into mountain biking. And that was, I think, really what got me started, was just riding around the neighborhood, being really young and being on a bike and having a neighbor that was also into it, right? So you had a group of friends that were into the same thing. It was really fun. And I think when you're young, like you said, we would build jumps and we would build little things and things to make it interesting other than just to ride, riding in a straight line. So as I was growing up is when mountain biking really became a thing. I think when I was in 6th grade, I got my first bike that had gears. There was no suspension, but I went from one of those like back pedal brake bikes to one that actually had brakes. And
I remember going in. You brought this up. It made me think. As kids, what was Bike Shop Bill's last name?
Seavey.
Bill Seavey. I remember the shop. It's kind of where underneath where Joe Green's was now, where
Wicked Loon.
Yeah, Wicked Loon is now. And I remember going in there as a kid, and like he had all things were just starting to really come out for bike components, and he had everything that was new like on the wall. And people he had kids working there and stuff like that. It was an amazing time. Now kids go to the store and they're looking at what new video game came out. But keep going with that.
Yeah, so I think I was fortunate to be at the kind of forefront of mountain biking and have the ability to have a bike that you could go into the woods or off the sidewalk or wherever and be able to ride. And as I got older and the technology progressed, we started to get front suspension, and then full suspension started to come around. And these are, compared to today's bikes, nowhere near as good. But I grew up in the time from before we had licenses to be able to get around town. Having a bike with gears was amazing. We'd get all the way up into like Abenaki Estates where one friend lived, and up north Wolfeboro, and all over the place. So it was the way to ride around. And I had one of those bike computers, and by the time we hit middle school, I was doing about 1,000 miles a summer on mountain bikes. And I think that was great, but it was also not as exciting in the sense that to your point, there was a jump in Sewell Woods in that sand pit area. There was concrete where that Mexican restaurant Pedro's burnt down, where Hatch Theater used to be way back in the day.
Yeah.
And we would like ride up and jump back and forth on 2 different levels of concrete. The old loading dock for Wolfeboro oil.
Yeah.
We'd jump off of that. But there weren't really trails.
Sure.
There weren't single track trails. And at that point that really wasn't a thing. So, we did what we knew, and we did what it's called trials riding, which is kind of like jumping up onto benches or jumping off of things, and that was kind of a cool thing to do back then. And then actually Bretton Woods and Sunday River and some other places did have lift service downhill, and my mother would load up the bike rack on the back of the car and drive a bunch of us up there and do that. But then that actually fell off after a while. Like, they stopped doing the downhill biking at the ski areas. But yeah, that's kind of what got me into the biking. And I think the other side of it is although I did play traditional sports, I was more into alternative sports, I guess. And that's actually when X Games started coming out.
Mm-hmm.
So I would much rather ride a mountain bike than play soccer.
Sure.
And I did skiing and things like that. But I was always drawn to the more adrenaline style sports.
So when did single track really come on the scene? Because I'm not as familiar with it as you are. When did that idea kind of? All of a sudden we had like these bikes with fat tire bikes, and those that was my first inclination that there was this new thing going on. But when did like single track or the development of these places all over the country now kind of come on scene?
I think states like Vermont were way ahead of where we are now. They had built trails, and they still are building. They have a great variety of trails in Vermont, going back probably 20, 30, 40 years at this point. So they've kind of stuck with it and continually progressed. But Highland Mountain over on the other side of the lake, that's probably, I don't know actual dates, but I'd say maybe like 15 years ago or something. That was
relatively new.
Yeah, it's fairly new, and I think part of it is due to the performance of bikes.
Sure.
The carbon fiber frames and full suspension, and it's become a thing where if you get a bike, it has a lot of nice features, and you can go over bumps, and it's smooth, and it makes it easy to ride. So, so I'd say that maybe in the last 15 years is really when it's kind of...
Probably coupled with that is when just like the social media for everything, there's social media for bike groups.
Yeah. And,
people are able to come together and track each other and find, good paths, good runs and stuff like that, and kind of, that data is all available. Yeah. So people can track that and find out where other people are riding, and there's associations that are associated with bike riding now. So the whole it's kind of exploded. So talk a little bit about like Wolfeboro single track and kind of how that came about and what the philosophy is there.
Yeah, so about 6, 7 years ago, Andrew Ingram actually approached me, and he's a neighbor in Wolfeboro terms, like probably a mile and a half away. But he wondered if I'd be interested in joining a group to build mountain bike trails. And at that point, my wife and I were actually looking at areas like Park City and Stowe and different areas, out in Utah and Vermont, for places to live that had skiing and biking. And due to the nature of my work, and I think this is another thing too, right? Being able to live kind of wherever you want, but still be able to work via computer. It's opened up the different potential to live in different areas. But we always had ties here, like you said at the beginning, right? We grew up together. I'm from this area. I've spent the majority of my life in this area. I've lived in the seacoast for a little bit, but the majority of the time been in Wolfeboro. And I think when Andrew mentioned that, I was like, yeah, I'd be interested in knowing what this is about. So we started having some meetings, and we had a group of folks that started the organization. And at that point, we started a 501c3, so we could take donations and be able to generate revenue to build trails and maintain trails, and so it was Andrew, and I guess I would say now the crew is Andrew Ingram, Rudy Meyer, Grant Hatch, Dan Coons, and Brad Helfer. And it's always been kind of a core 6, 7, 8 people that have run most of everything. But the first 3 years, Andrew Ingram was the president. And we were able to, in the first couple of years, establish relationships with the Lakes Region Conservation Trust, which is the folks who own the Sewell Woods property. The Lakes Region, the Wolfeboro Conservation Commission, who owns the land at Willybrook, or Fernald is what, Fernald Station at the crossing on 109. And they also own another tract of land, Trask Mountain, over in North Wolfeboro. We haven't done a lot there. But then I think most notably in the past couple of years, we've established a relationship with the town of Wolfeboro and built out a lot of stuff at Abenaki. So, I think in the beginning, it was actually really nice that Dan, with the Wolfeboro Conservation Commission, had started to kind of think about doing some trails at Fernald. And there was already kind of some trails in Sewell Woods, and we took some things that people had built in the past, or very basic trails, and formalized it. And they kind of took ownership of it through the 501c3 and through actual MOUs that we established with the Lakes Region Conservation Trust, the town of Wolfeboro, the Conservation Commission. Because at that point, if we had this mechanism to raise money, raise awareness, keep things riding good, build more stuff, it worked out really well. And, in the past 3 years, I've been the president. So, it's evolved, and people have kind of come in and out, and there's different people that volunteer time. But, I think the folks that I mentioned are the core ones that have been part of it. Yeah,
we'll show at some point during this, maybe at the end, we'll show some of the trails that are out there at Abenaki, Fernald, and Sewell Woods. And the trail systems, is grown. And it's very impressive. I've been out to Fernald. I've walked the trails up at Abenaki when I was on the board. But some of them are, you have the whole range of trails at Abenaki. So it's not just, these trails aren't just built for, expert riders. You're comfortable enough to bring your kids out there riding, and people should be, because the trails are built for basically all ages, all generations, and all levels of experience, right?
Yep. Yeah, and I think probably the easiest way to think about the trails would be similar to skiing, right? Where you have green runs, you have blue runs, black runs. That's how we think about trails in general, is you need to have a variety. And I think Fernald is, I'd say, more of the green to blue, and Sewell Woods is probably more of a blue, and Abenaki right now we have a little green, but not, it's more of the climbing than the descent.
Sure.
And which actually kind of gets into what we're hoping for next year, which would be to have a green downhill run at Abenaki, because you want to have the ability for younger folks or people that are maybe learning,
sure,
no matter what their age is, and want maybe a smoother, easier way to get down the hill. But yeah, there's a lot of different varieties, and there's about, I think, 5 miles at Fernald, about 5 or 6 at Sewell Woods, and probably similar at Abenaki. So
there's trail maps for all these too.
Yeah.
People can find trail maps if they're interested in getting out there and riding these.
Yep.
Fernald's kind of like a big circle almost, and there's inner trails, and it just keeps going around and around and around. I've been out there.
Yep.
And then Abenaki has Abenaki goes all the way to the wastewater treatment plant, and then kind of wraps around the back of the mountain and stuff like that. And you got a climb trail on the left-hand side of Abenaki as you go up, and trails along the other snow. They crisscross other trails. We got ski trails up there. We got Nordic trails up there, and we have some snowshoeing trails up there as well. So the trail system all kind of combines, and it just builds upon itself in a way, is the way I see it. So, and you guys have spent a lot of energy up there. There's there's those bridges you talk about. There's jumps up there, and but there's also ways for people to get around those things too if they don't feel comfortable doing all that stuff.
Yeah, no, everything we build is, you got to think about who's going to be out there,
Sure.
right? And not have a situation where somebody gets caught off guard. So I think that's, again, where we're trying to make sure that there's different types of trails or different types of skill levels, and if there are kind of features that, there's some drops out in Tomahawk, but there's a way to get around it, right?
Yeah.
So there's different ways to be safe, and
Yeah.
I think that's what we always think about. And I know that there's been some talk around some of the bridges and things like
Sure.
that. But I personally reached out to all of the NEMBA chapters, which is the New England Mountain Bike Association, the Vermont Bike Association, the Stowe Trails, to get their opinion, right? So it's like, it's not just the Wolfeboro Single Track Alliance that's making decisions. We're actually reaching out to other organizations to make sure that the things we're doing make sense within the broader New England mountain bike community. So
it's nice going up to a couple times this summer. It's nice to go up to Abenaki and pull into the parking lot. A brand new facility there. That's a great, it's a year-round facility now, and the pop can be used year-round. But it's nice going up there on the weekend and seeing the amount of pickup trucks up there, with the bike protectors in the back of the tailgate, and people up riding, and you see people up riding. You go up to you can also go up to, the parking lot off of Filter Bed Road.
Yep.
There's people park up there and ride. So you obviously you know that people are riding it, just by, it's obviously bringing people into Wolfeboro to. And you must see comments and stuff like that online. So the trails have been well received by riders.
Oh yeah. So, I think one of the things, just given this time of year, which is something we should mention too, is that in the winter we also groom for fat biking at Fernald. So so far this winter we haven't had enough to groom, but there's enough snowpack out there. Well, it just rained today.
Well, there were bikers out there yesterday.
Yeah,
I ran the path and. I followed. They packed it down nicely for me to run the Bridge Falls path because there was all fat tire trail marks.
Yeah. So but I was out there this weekend, and it was great. I mean, so you can actually ride some of the areas in the winter, which is nice. But yeah, to your point, in the summer, as stupid as it sounds, I actually kind of get excited when I'm in a town and I see people with bike racks.
Mm-hmm.
And Wolfeboro, that used to not be the case. But now you can when you drive through town in the summer, you'll see somebody riding a mountain bike or a couple people going through and then heading off to the Bridge Falls path to get out to Fernald or going out towards Abenaki.
Yep.
Or like you said, when you park in the parking lots, there's cars there and there's people out there. We actually have access to some data which showed that over the past 12 months, there was like 6,000 unique rides that were tracked on a specific piece of software.
Yep.
In this area, some of it's Bridge Falls, some of it's on the road, some of it's in the woods. But if you look at heat map data, that you can see that there's a really solid concentration on some of the trails that Wolfeboro Single Track has built and maintains. So it's really cool to see that it's being used, and even folks that come in from out of town, because I've actually started to ask people, hey, where are you coming from?
Sure.
And they're like, these trails are great. We didn't know about them,
Yeah.
and obviously things like this, coming on
Yeah.
here and having more awareness and putting
They
things
go out.
out.
They obviously they probably come up here. Some people probably travel a couple hours, so they come up here. They ride for a couple hours, whatever.
Yep.
They go out to Beverage. They go out to Burnt Timber. They go out to a restaurant with the buddies they're riding with.
Yep.
Couples go out. And they come here. They eat food. Maybe some people are even staying over. Who knows? Might be staying at Airbnbs and stuff like that. So I mean,
Yep.
it's definitely bringing people into town. And it's a different group of people too, which is nice. They're coming here for daily activities, and they're probably leaving, going back to their house. But I think that information is important too. I mean, it's nice to see that there's actually people out there riding it and enjoying it. And so, what's the plan for what's the hope for the future on the trails?
Yeah, so I mean, to date, I believe we've raised about believe it or not, about I think $400,000 to build what we've done.
Yeah, which is amazing.
And everything from getting a snow dog for the grooming.
Yep.
We actually just put a new shed over at Fernald to house tools, and so there's like,
because you guys not only build them, you maintain them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So like we've bought equipment, but we've also had trail builders build trails, and we've built and maintained trails with the team of folks that are part of Wolfeboro Single Track. So looking towards 2025, and this year, I guess, ideally what we would like to see is the town, the Board of Selectmen, to approve a green downhill run at least.
Mm-hmm.
We have some other thoughts for some different areas that we could expand some additional trails. I know they always have a little bit of hesitation on approving things
Sure.
in larger like at once. But that, I think if we could get that done, and I think there's also some access where we keep the trails off of the double track, like the cross-country ski trails, and keep them as specific mountain bike trails that would connect into the filter bed parking lot, and keep it off of the cross-country ski trails from the beginning. So not just like you not going down on the double track and then cutting into the trails, like having its own separate place. That would be great. I think after some of the clearing in Sewell Woods, there's some potential in there. We want to talk to Lakes Region Conservation Trust about how maybe we could expand in there. And I think the goal with that has been to keep everything, like over the past few years, we've moved the trails off of the double track, like the stone dust and the walking paths. So that's kind of how we're thinking about Abenaki as well. Just because, as you mentioned, right, there's cross-country ski trails, there's mountain bike trails, snowshoe trails, all this stuff. And I think the more, especially the bike trails, that we could have dedicated trails and then even directional trails that are up and down. Yeah. It's for safety's purposes, and especially with the green trail, just for novice riders and kids. That would be really good to see happen this year. I've also talked about potentially, when we were getting some numbers around doing a pump track over at the Nick, where that skate park is. Yep. That skate park, I think, went in when we were in high school.
Yes, at least, yeah.
And it's sinking into the pavement, and the ramps are kind of in bad shape. So if we could turn that into a paved pump track with some skateboard features, I think that would also be a really nice thing to see. I've actually talked to skateboarders over there saying, how do you like it? And they're like, well, it's here. I wish it was better, So like
there's no place else for them to go either. So,
right.
Yeah. Because there's nothing else in town for them to ride. So it's all these topics are fascinating about use and stuff like that, and what Wolfeboro. But it's all these groups kind of come together in certain ways, and like you said, there's a core 6 of you. There's a core 6 that probably do cross country ski trails and stuff like that. But it's a benefit for the entire town. Yeah. So if someone wants to be interested in learning how to ride a bike or wanted to try these trails, there's all different level trails out there. Great experience for kids to go out there and be able to use them. That's what you want to encourage kids to. The biggest goal, I think right now is to get them off the computer, get them off the tablet, and get them out in nature. We live in a great environment here in Wolfeboro, in the Lakes region, in New Hampshire. Yep. And we have these great resources that are literally right at our front door. So the trails are a great example of what a group of people can do to really benefit the entire town. So it's really cool to see it. So I'm really impressed.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I think that that point is very. I think when you're part of a board, you realize that the board's and president and they do a lot of work, but that's not to say that the community doesn't appreciate it. Yeah. I definitely, when I stop and talk to people on the trails, they're very happy that they exist, and we on the website and throughout the years, all of the donations and things. We get a lot of people filling out, I want to volunteer, how do I help out? Yep. They want to be involved more, and that base is continuing to grow.
So the website is
wolfeborosingletrack.org.
Okay.
One of the things too, I think we're actually speaking with NEMBA right now too. So depending on when this airs and how things go, we are looking to align with them.
Okay.
So that's the website may redirect at some point.
Sure.
To do a different chapter of NEMBA, but again, we're just trying to think of the evolution of this and how do we maintain an organization that's going to continue to grow and scale to be able to support more trails and more maintenance. And again, that's we're listening to the town, the Board of Selectmen specifically around well, what happens if you guys go away, or things like that. So if we align with a larger organization that's overseeing mountain biking throughout New England, that goes away. So I think we're trying to address any sorts of concerns, and I know that there was some slides too that I shared that show that where the Wolfeboro Fire Department one day called and it's like, hey, if somebody gets hurt in the woods, we were eyeing this piece of equipment.
Sure.
And so I called Tom Zotti, I think that day, and was like, let's buy it.
Yeah.
Because I actually was able to secure funding for it. We bought it that day.
Yeah.
And then now they have a titanium rescue litter with a fat tire bike wheel where they can roll people through the woods. And, but we're happy to, work with the town and support the folks like that. And in the town police department as well, one of the officers was patrolling on an old mountain bike. Yeah, that was, I think, from the 90s, back when, mountain biking picked up, like how we started the conversation. And it was too small, super old, and so there was a group of folks that wanted to pitch in and make that happen. So we bought them a new bike so that they could patrol around town. And that actually was really nice. I happened to be downtown one day, and there was a woman on a bike that was having issues, and the Josh at the time, the officer came by, and he actually had a toolkit on the bike, and he helped her, on a bike thing, and so it was kind of funny to see, just that public interaction being such a positive thing, and the kind of the policing in the community.
Absolutely.
So
that's what Wolfeboro is all about, though. It's always been about that. It's funny because those bikes were probably purchased in the 90s, those original, those were used to chase us around on our bikes, because we had bikes, so they needed bikes. Yeah. But it also gives them the way to patrol the Bridge Falls Path and all those other places in Wolfeboro. So it's the whole thing is just great. And I really appreciate you coming on, and I think the folks do here in Wolfeboro. It gives them an interesting perspective. I'm sure they've watched selectmen's meetings. You've seen meetings out there where Chris or another member of the Wolfeboro Single Track is presenting before the Board of Selectmen, and you've seen a lot of different things about that. But this gives kind of more of a background into how it started, what the philosophy, what the mission is, and what it looks like going forward. So we'll show you some of the slides too at some point here. Jake will put them into the show here, but it was a fantastic show. Thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it. I know Tim does. Wolfeboro Community TV is fabulous. They enable us to put on shows like this, and we're always looking for sponsorship out there at Wolfeboro Community TV. Every dollar gets used here to promote activities and to cover activities that happen here and around Wolfeboro. And I know you out there really enjoy being able to see this content, so it's important that you speak with your checkbook and help sponsor Wolfeboro Community TV or the Wolfeboro Exchange, which will sponsor Wolfeboro Community TV as well. So we appreciate you watching today. Happy New Year, everybody out there. Be safe and be kind to each other. Good day.